Dating.
Courting.
Going out.
Seeing each other.
Dating someone.
Going steady.
Aw, I can't think of any more.
Let's get into that.
Let's get into that. Hi, I'm Andrea Warnock.
I'm Nathan Warnock.
And you have tuned into Marriage by Design, and this is Marriage Monday, a time where we get to talk about marriage and what the Bible has to say about relationships and marriage, and then just kind of our personal lives in regards to our marriage.
That's right. So this week we are digging into dating. We're starting kind of a series we're going to do for a few weeks on premarital relationships.
Right.
So much of your marriage is determined by your dating life and by your engagement life and how seriously you take your marriage. So if you're watching this and you are married, don't tune out, because part of the reason why we wanted to share this with you is because you probably know people that are either dating or engaged.
Or will be dating someday.
That's right. You may have a few of those people living in your home with you right now.
Yeah, a lot of the conversation that we had in regards to this episode was in the ways that we think about dating for, when our kids get to that age.
That's right. I don't know that Andrea and I have ever spent so much time talking back and forth about the content for a single episode than we did for this dating episode.
Hours and hours and hours.
Tons of conversation because, I don't know necessarily that you and I were like right on the same page with regards to how we feel about dating.
Right.
So some of that may come up over the course of the next half hour or 45 minutes as we talk about dating. But that's what we're going to do today. Talk about dating, and then we'll be talking about some other premarital applications as well over the next couple of weeks. So without further ado, dating.
Dating.
So dating is a hot button issue. And it probably has been for as long as dads had daughters and moms had sons.
Well, that's not true. Probably for as long as dating has been around, because that's not always been the case.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's right. I know it was a big deal when I was younger. So, not to date myself, but when I was...
You dated yourself.
See what I did there? Classic. So not to put a date on myself. Anyway.
Okay.
But... I grew up kind of when that I Kissed Dating Goodbye book came out by Harris. Joshua Harris, that's right. And basically, at the time, that was something that a ton of good Christian boys and girls that I knew, their parents were trying to get them to read that book.
Including your parents, I think, right?
Including my parents.
Yeah.
And lots of other parents. And at the time, his whole thing was, he was a teenager at the time, and his deal was basically that dating, you just shouldn't do it. And he had this whole idea of courting, which, as you read the book, interestingly, courting sounds an awful lot like dating with a different name at the front of it. It
depends upon how you see dating. But.
Right. So, we wanted to talk just a little bit with you guys about some things we see from couples we've had an opportunity to work with, from our own relationship, from other relationships that we've seen, about dating.
Right.
So maybe the best place then for us to start is, what is it? Because dating has a lot of implications. And so the question is, what are we talking about when we talk about dating?
Yeah, this was definitely something that took us a long time to land on. I mean, the term dating was something that we went back and forth about. What do we really think dating is? So let's talk about the best place to go for a definition, right?
Right.
Is Wikipedia.
Obviously.
Not the dictionary, Wikipedia.
Yeah, so what we wanted to do to start this off, and I'm going to read the first little bit of Wikipedia's definition of dating. And part of the reason why we went to Wikipedia instead of like Webster is because a huge part of dating now is what others around say it is. Right? I mean, that's kind of the first thing we want to talk about when we talk about dating, is you've got two parallel things going on. You've got dating as society around us says dating should be, and you've got dating as, we should think about it from a Christian worldview. And we talk a lot about when we talk about morals, right? You've probably heard like, hey, is this decision a moral decision? Well, you've got two things there. You've got morals, which morals are what they are; they don't change. So you've got those for us from a Christian standpoint. We say those come from a greater authority, right? Sure. Society deals with a similar sounding word, but a very different meaning. The mores of the society. Mores. And the mores are the things that society says are good and bad.
Yeah, acceptable.
Right. So the problem is when we confuse morals with mores. Because things that are right and wrong because they're right and wrong. Because there is a greater authority that has said this is what is right and this is what is wrong. Mores are like this over time,
up and
right?
down.
That's right. I mean, when we all know this, right?
Yeah.
That's right. In today's, sort of cancel culture, there are words that you could say, 100 years ago that you probably shouldn't have, but that were acceptable to say then that you could never say now. And as we go through time, these things seem to speed up, and there are words I could say at the beginning of this episode that I can't say now, apparently. So that's how quickly these things go because of the mores of society. These mores change. So that's why we went to Wikipedia first, is because I wanted to know, Wikipedia is user uploaded, right? So this is someone's opinion on what dating is that's backed up by all the other people that have watched Wikipedia and not commented on it. So here's what it says. Dating is a stage of romantic relationships in humans whereby two people meet socially with the aim of each assessing the other's suitability as a prospective partner in an intimate relationship. What do you think of that, babe?
Yeah, so I think that's what society thinks dating is, right? But I think that as Christians, we should see dating as very different than that.
Right.
And the first part that I take an issue with is that the very last two words, intimate relationship. So really, dating should be, having a relationship with somebody with the purpose of marriage in mind. Not that you're going to marry that person, but that you are looking for you are dating only because you are looking for a spouse. Right.
So in juxtaposition to that definition we just read, we would say that dating is is in and of itself an intimate relationship, whereby two people are determining whether or not to move forward with marriage.
Right.
That's the specific goal of dating.
Right.
And I think I agree with that. And you and I spent a ton of time talking about this.
Right.
And at the end of the day, where I think we landed on that is dating for the fun of dating. Here's the thing. Dating is fraught with pitfalls for the modern Christian. Dating by itself can be a dangerous activity because there's constant temptation, and I'm not just talking about sexual temptation,
Absolutely.
Although that certainly is a temptation, but I'm talking about the temptation to build an emotional tie to someone beyond what you should be having, the temptation to
gloss over things that you should be really considering.
Right, the temptation to isolate yourself from other people that can speak truth into your life. Yeah. I mean, all of these things are huge temptations of dating, and yet we wield dating in today's society as like, the same way as we might grab a bowl of cereal in the morning. Right? Like, let me just date, right? I mean, I'm 14, 15, 16, 18, 22. Let me just date. That's what we do. Let's date. Right? And we don't have any, I don't think, appreciation. And I'm generalizing, so certainly, I'm sure there are people out there that have this understanding. But generally, within the Christian community, we do not have a proper appreciation for what dating is and how dangerous it can be. And that's forgetting secular America, right? I mean, I just, Andrew and I were talking about this. I read an article not too long ago that was talking about how now, the age-old secular dating question, right? How many dates do I have to go on before I can sleep with this person and not look like a hoe, right? And I'm talking about guys or girls. I'm not specifically talking about girls.
Yeah,
right?
so just in your mind, think about what would society say.
Right.
Is like the average amount of dates that you should go on before you sleep with somebody.
That's right. That's right. This article, the first half of it was saying what the average is now.
I know, it's crazy.
And they had polled a whole bunch of people, and they had polled people on Tinder and Bumble and all the rest. So, I mean, this is a secular poll, right? So you can discount that if you want, but the reality of the matter is that's who we're talking about here. And they said that it was, I don't have the number exactly, but it was between, did you look it up?
Well,
so you know it?
1.84.
Okay.
Or maybe 1.87, but
okay.
1.8.
1.8 and change dates before you sleep with someone. Not 18 point something, 1.8. So by the time you get to the second date, you have slept with the person that you're dating. That's what the average was. This article was making the argument that there's a growing number of people that think that the proper way to do this is to have sex with your partner before you go on any dates, before you go on date one. Because their argument in this twisted logic was, well, for one thing, it allows us to truly be honest with ourselves because neither of us are thinking about all of the pressure of sex because we already had it. So that's all done. So there's no sexual tension because we did that right up front. And then I can decide if that whole sexual thing is going to work for me. Because if it's not, then I don't want all the messiness of getting involved in an emotional relationship. Think of what we're saying about sex in that
it's all
admission.
About me.
It's all about me, and the sex is like the window dressing for the emotional relationship, rather than the sex is the cement that really gives depth and intimacy to the marriage, right? It's not just sex that gives intimacy to a marriage, but that is certainly a big piece of it.
Sure it is.
And instead we're saying, well, that part's just a distraction. We know that's going to happen anyway, so we might as well just do that right up front, and then we can have, a serious dating relationship.
The craziness of all of that is that's in such opposition to what God says marriage is.
Right.
Because marriage should not be selfish at all,
right,
or self-seeking, but rather we're only self-seeking in that sort of circumstance where it's like 1 to 2, 0 to 2 dates. We're having sex to see if this thing works out for me,
right?
And if we seem to be compatible, and so we can get that off the table and stop having the pressure of that. That's all self-seeking. Whereas that's complete in total opposition to what God says marriage should be.
That's right. So when we consider that Wikipedia definition of dating as a stage of romantic relationships in humans whereby two people meet socially with the aim of assessing each other's suitability as a prospective partner in an intimate relationship, you're right. As I read that, I think that what that is like dating to date. Right, like dating to see if we should be dating. Because I view dating as an intimate relationship. This seems to make it clear that dating is super superficial and you just date whoever you want and then you move on, and eventually you'll find someone that you move from dating to what? I'd love to know what the intimate relationship definition is. To someone you're having sex with?
Intimate relationship dating, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess someone
considering marriage dating.
Right, yeah, I guess.
Or that's not even true necessarily. Considering long-term relationship dating, maybe.
Right.
Right.
So, not to belabor that too much, but I hope that, it's at least called probably what you already know to your attention, which is that there's a very different understanding of dating between those of us with a Christian worldview and those of us with a secular worldview around us. And that's okay. It's, that we can't expect people who have a secular worldview to take a look at or care about what the Bible says about romantic relationships. Now, the Bible doesn't talk a ton about dating specifically, partly because that was a very different society back then than it is now. And in fact, Andrew and I spent a lot of time talking about, well, what does that tell us? And sometime we should do a video on just what does God's design for marriage tell us when we view it through the lens of people that lived 2000 BC, 1000 BC, because it's really interesting to think about that. And so we're not going to do that today. But what I did want to start off with as a transition point is, if you're watching this and you have kids, you might be thinking, well, what are you going to tell your kids? Because when we talk about dating, so often we get caught up in the, well, how old is old enough to start dating? Well, when... what about high school? Should we, what about this, or the mechanics of dating? Right. What should be happening there? And at some point, we're going to do a Family Friday about when our kids are dating, and the ground rules we're going to put in place, because we've also talked quite a bit about that. But to start with, just for let's use Jackson as an example, because he's the oldest. When can he start dating? My answer to that's a solid, I don't know. I don't know.
There's no age to it.
No,
really.
We talked about this, and in my mind, there are 3 requirements for Jackson to begin dating. And the third one, I'm going to then kick to you to jump into, because this is our next thing we want to talk about today. The number one thing for Jackson is, how does he treat his mother? Okay, that's the number one thing. And how does he treat his mom? Is he loving to her? Is he respectful of her? Is he kind-hearted to her? That's the number one thing I'm looking at for him. The number 2 thing is, how does he treat his sister or sisters if he has multiple of them at some point down the road? Okay, how does he treat his mom? How does he treat his sister?
Now tell me why
sisters?
those are important.
Well, because what that tells me is his understanding of how to treat another woman created in the image of God. And if he's not going to treat his mother and his sisters who live in his home with him, and he is not able to treat them with the kindness, respect, and love that they deserve when I'm standing right behind him, he definitely is not going to treat another girl that he's just out and about with the kind of love, respect, and kindness that being a daughter of the Most High God requires. And he's 10, right? He's not dating anytime soon. But I've told him, when he is disrespectful to you or disrespectful to Ryan, to him, I've said, hey, when you want to go out on a date with a girl someday, and you come to ask me, and I say no, remember this moment. Because these are the moments that I remember. Because if you can't treat your mom and your sister with love and caring and kindness, as treating them as a daughter unto the Lord, I for sure am not unleashing you on some other man's daughter and just hope that you decide to be on your best behavior. That's not happening. Right. So,
and
go ahead.
As a quick aside to that, as parents, we should be really encouraging our daughters to look for guys who are treating their moms and their sisters
That's exactly
with respect.
That's
and saying, maybe for a while, a guy will treat you differently than he treats his mom and his sister, because you're never on better behavior than when you're dating.
Yep.
But trust that if he does not respect his mom, his sister, his grandma, whatever, he won't hold that respect for you either.
That's right.
So a man's heart is so important, and you can see how that plays out in those sorts of relationships. So let's talk to our daughters about those things. You should be very wary about a guy who doesn't have the respect for those sorts of relationships.
That's right. So how he treats his mom, how he treats his sister, and then the most important one is, does he understand God's design for marriage?
Yeah.
And that probably sounds self-serving on a channel called Marriage by Design, but that is the most, you are absolutely not qualified to date until you know what God's plan is for marriage, period.
Right. And we have lots of content about that, but tell us in a nutshell, what's God's design for marriage?
Right. So marriage, we see clearly in the Bible, starting in Genesis 2, going into Matthew 19, Ephesians 5, Corinthians 7, 1 Corinthians 7. We see a ton of passages of the Bible where various authors throughout the Bible talk about the importance of marriage. Biblical marriage. And what we see as God's clear design for marriage is that marriage is a reflection of God's designed relationship with us as his people. Mm-hmm. That kind of intimacy, that kind of oneness, that we're grafted into his family the same way that we graft our wives into our family, right? They take our name, they become part of our family. And so our marriages are designed to be a clear picture of that. We're meant to be a walking testimony to the love of God.
Right.
That's why Satan is so serious about attacking marriages, because Satan wants to pervert that picture of God's desire for love and relationship with us. And how effective has that been? Right? I mean, with the fall of the family came a ton of the problems that we deal with now, pain and hurt in our kids that's perpetuated on. Right. And if that's the plan for marriage.
If marriage is supposed to be a walking testimony of the gospel, what is the gospel? Well, Jesus came down not to be served, but to serve.
Right.
And so that should be what our desire in marriage is too, is to not be self-seeking and thinking about my own happiness or what I can get out of it, but
That's right.
But our desire in marriage should be to reflect the gospel and to serve, and desire to always point our marriage to Christ.
Right. So to put into that, to bring it back home for dating, the problem is that what dating has become is the process by which I decide if this person can make and keep me happy.
Right.
Juxtaposed with what we see, the only, and again, you're welcome to put down in the comments if you disagree or you have other thoughts, but for me, the only rightful heart attitude to have with regards to dating is this a person that I'm willing to sacrifice the rest of my life for? Mm-hmm. Doesn't have anything to do with my happiness. It has to do with, is this a person that I'm willing to sacrifice my life for? Mm-hmm. And in that regard, dating is about finding out some things about, women. If you're dating, you want to know, right? Who is this guy that I'm coming under the authority of? Because biblically, you're coming under his authority. So if you get married, an example I'm going to use. If you get married and a week after you get married, your husband says, you know what, I've decided I'm going to quit my job and move to Idaho and become a potato farmer.
That's
right?
Nathan's constant example. I swear he wants to be a potato farmer someday.
Guess what's going to happen? Biblically speaking, you're packing up shop, moving away from your family to Idaho, and you're going to farm potatoes. Because when you marry a guy, you come under his authority. Right? Guys, you need to be spending that dating process to get to know, what is the heart of this woman that I'm going to be leading? Is it a heart of contention? Is it a heart of control? Or is it a heart of submission to the Lord?
Right.
That's the purpose of dating. Not to decide, am I going to be happy or not?
The greatest things that you can find in somebody that you're thinking you may want to marry are, do they love the Lord?
Yep.
Desperately.
Right.
I mean, not a hobby relationship with the Lord, but is that what their life revolves around?
That's right.
The Lord.
That's right.
And do they... So that is number one. And then number two, do they understand biblical marriage? And are they, as much as you can possibly tell, full out committed to that?
Right.
Are they understanding what God's purpose is for marriage? And are they saying, regardless of circumstances, I'm committed to that?
That's right. And why does that matter? Because at the end of the day, the kind of silly thing about dating is you're talking about dating someone for let's just go crazy and say you dated them for 7 or 8 years, right? On a huge amount of time to date someone. Your marriage is probably going to be, let's say you waited till you were 35 and then dated them for 8 years. So now you're 43. Your marriage is probably 35 to 40 years still. Okay? So is it reasonable to expect that we're going to be able to tell in 7 or 8 years of dating if this person's going to make me quote unquote happy for 30 years from now? Are you the same person that you were 30 years ago? Are you even close to the same person that you were 30 years ago? Because I'm not.
Right.
I'm not even close to the same person I was 10 years ago. I mean, when we make dating about deciding if this person is worthy of me committing the rest of my life to, we are immediately driving it in the ditch.
Yeah.
And instead, what you said's exactly right. Sorry, what you said's exactly right. We should be figuring out, is this person connected to the Holy Spirit, and are they living that out in their life? Why does that matter?
Because if they are, that's all you need, right? Because they're listening to the Holy Spirit, and their desire is to be. That's right. Their desire is to put your desires above you, and then vice versa. And,
that's right.
And then it's always a seeking to know you, a seeking to be one with you. And where can you go wrong with that?
Right. Yeah, that's right. So babe, as we think about that, I think one of the questions that people ask is, well, how do I find people? Right? I mean, if I'm not just going and just dating for fun, which is kind of in vogue right now, has been for decades.
Sure.
If I'm not just dating people to see if I even like them at all, then how do I find people?
Yeah, that can be tough. I mean, you can find people at church.
Right.
It just depends upon your stage of life. I mean, some people, you find people everywhere. In college, it's easy probably to find people in a college group, either at your school, like a faith-based college group at your school, or a church or something. You're meeting all sorts of people in college. If you're an adult who's in your career, that may get a little bit tougher, but you can find people at church or volunteer opportunities. Ask your friends if they've got people that you all can hang out with, and kind of go from there. Just in your social circles. It doesn't have to be, there's Fred, he's single, we should go out, but
what
just
up, Fred?
just hang out in social circles for a while with single people, and you can observe the other single people. It doesn't have to be like, let's date right away just because we're two single people,
Right. Yeah, no, that means you may have to inconvenience yourself to find those groups of people to be able to hang around. I know people that live in small towns or don't have tons of different circles to be able to hang out in, and my heart goes out because it's hard. It used to be that there were lots of social activities around for people to get involved with that were like, maybe they weren't Christian, quote unquote Christian things, but they were decently wholesome activities.
Yeah.
And man, it's hard now because it's like, well, okay, I can hang out at church, but if I'm not finding anyone at church, then like the bar scene's the only other
and that's
avenue.
It's tough.
I'm hearing it.
It's tough.
But yeah, it is about intentionally seeking out those groups of people that have interests similar to you.
And we had a pretty lengthy conversation about online dating.
Yeah.
And that can be hard. And I believe that some people, online dating is the right thing. Some people, maybe God's told you no on doing that. So there's no black or white with that, right? But
agreed.
But we know plenty of people who have done the online dating thing poorly. And we know plenty of people who have done the online dating thing and it's been great. They found my one of our family members is a great example of that. They found each other and they have a great Christian marriage and they're great people.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
And they did the online dating thing really well. So
Totally.
And some other family and friends and all that. So I think with the online dating, you have to be honest about, there's a lot of people there that are not looking for the right reasons to be, for the same reasons that you are to be there. And just be super careful with it as far as, of course, safety, but careful as far as, not getting involved with so many people that you don't even really know what they're about.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the mechanism, I think where we landed on this, the mechanism isn't, I don't believe, as important as the purpose.
Yeah.
Right? What is the purpose for dating? Because there are a ton of selfish purposes for dating. And I'm not just talking about online dating, although I would put that in there as well. Any kind of dating. There's a ton of selfish purposes for doing that. There are not very many righteous purposes for doing that. And so, when you get into dating, I think you have to ask yourself in your heart of hearts, what's the purpose for doing this? Am I doing it because I genuinely want to move forward with committing myself to marrying this person? And I want to, make sure, okay, this is the path I'm going down, or am I doing it for any other purpose?
Yeah, and as I'm thinking about that, I think that was another thing that we talked about in regards to our kids dating. If they can say, yeah, I'm dating for the purpose of marriage.
Right.
Not saying I'm dating this person because I'm going to marry them necessarily.
No.
But I'm dating to look for somebody to marry.
Right.
And I think that was another thing we had talked about with our kids.
Right.
So, anyway.
Right. All right. So,
yeah. Then another thing I think we should talk about with dating in general is the purity side of it, right? And this is another thing, I'm not sure that we're on the same page, Nathan and I are on the same page, but a couple weeks ago I started thinking, so when Nathan and I were dating, when we started dating, I don't know, were you looking for, when we started dating, what was your purpose in dating?
To get to know you better and hang out. And
yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I had really any express purpose other than you gave me your number and I wanted to hang out with you more.
Yeah, I don't know that I had any purpose either. I definitely didn't have the purpose of getting married.
No.
I had enjoyed several years of dating for the fun of it.
Right.
And dated quite a bit and I really enjoyed it. So for me, when we started dating, it was sure, that's fun. I was not interested in marriage at all. that changed quickly for me, surprisingly, because I was not wanting to get married anytime soon. But yeah, I mean, we did not have the dating relationship that we would have if we now.
No.
If we were the people that we are now.
No.
But yeah, we've grown a lot and learned a lot from that. But in dating, we would do so much different, and one of the things is the purity side of it. And so I was thinking a couple weeks ago, gosh, if I was in a circumstance where Nathan had passed away and I was in the dating scene again, I just don't know the purity side of it. I just don't know that I'd be I think the whole not kissing until you're at the altar is great. I think I understand, I'm understanding where that's coming from as far as what's the purpose of any sort of physical interaction with the person that you're dating, right? Is it to say, I love you, and that, that's it? Or is it to incite something more? And for me, when I was dating, it was always to almost always to incite something more. It was lustful desires. It was because I felt a certain way sexually, I felt a certain way and wanted to make out with you or whatever, So for me, the purpose when we were dating, it wasn't right. But as an adult, if I were dating, as a 30-something-year-old now and having understood a little bit more about purity, I think I would be so careful with that side of dating, just because a lot of that is meant to just fan the flame of lust. And I just wouldn't want that. So I think anything that you're doing dating that is ever meant to fan a flame has to be totally cut off. I mean, if that, but anything that's just like, I just want to tell you I love you, and I'm not thinking anything lustful, and that all that is great.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I would do that so differently now.
So what's the Bible say about purity?
Yeah, so there's quite a few verses in the Bible that talk about purity.
That's an understatement.
Quite a few. But I'll just go through a few of them. So Matthew 5:28 is one, and it says, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So that's a heavy one. I mean, if you are looking at a woman with lustful intent, and lustful, I looked that definition up in the dictionary, and it said, sexual desire. So if you're even looking at or doing anything with somebody that brings about sexual desire, that's like committing adultery. God's super clear. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. So if you're ever, taking actions with, a makeout session is not meant to say, hey, I love you. It's meant to, it's meant to do more than that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is a good point, too, as you're looking up the next verse, for us to remember, is that when we're dating, you might be dating your future wife or your future husband. You might also be dating someone else's future wife or future husband.
Do you want to, yeah.
And if that's the case, the way that you're treating them in your dating relationship, is that something that's honoring to that person's future spouse? I think that's an important question for us to ask ourselves.
Right. The Bible talks about keeping the marriage bed pure, and you should be keeping somebody else's marriage bed pure too.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting that.
Someone else's, whether you're not in marriage or you're in marriage.
Right.
Keeping everybody's doing your part to keep everybody's marriage bed pure that you're involved with.
That's right.
Okay, then Hebrews 13:4 says, let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous.
Yeah, I'll say on here too, and this goes into marriage as well, but there's a lot of things you can do to make your marriage bed impure while you're dating. And I'm not talking about necessarily about sex, like having sex only, right? There's conversations you guys can be having, things you can be into, looking at or doing together, even while you're dating and engaged, that will follow you into marriage. Yes. So, even while you're dating, make a point to meditate on that verse in Hebrews and be asking yourselves, this thing that we're doing, is this casting shade on our future marriage, or if that's where we go, or what? Because we should be super diligent about that.
Yep. Yeah, and then 1 Corinthians 6:18 says, flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. And flee means run, get away from it. So any type of sexual immorality, we shouldn't be toying with it. And that's, I think, what I was thinking about a couple weeks ago when I was really percolating on that idea, is so much of the physicality in dating or engagement or whatever is playing with the sexual side of a relationship, and it's not fleeing from sexual immorality. It's not staying as far away a lot of times. And for us, when we were dating, it's how close can I get to the line without going over?
Yep.
And that's not God honoring.
Yep. Yeah, it's good. Read that verse one more time, babe, because I want to share something about that.
Flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body.
Part of the reason I think that that's a reality is because there are so many sins we can commit where you sin and then you move on, and hopefully we ask for forgiveness in those things. But when you have sex with someone, you can create a tie. You do create a tie to that person, because sex is at its core, sex is a spiritual thing. It's a physical manifestation of a spiritual thing. You are joining yourself together to another person. right? I mean, that's what you're actually physically doing. But it creates a spiritual soul tie, is what it's called, between you and that person. And sometimes those soul ties will never leave you. And so, if you think of yourself as, when you have sex with someone, putting a pair of handcuffs on your hand to their hand, and then they have sex with someone else after you break up, now they're handcuffed to that person, and then that person's had sex with 2 or 3 other people, so they've got handcuffs to those people, and then you see this woman you really want to be with over there, and you try to go to her, and you can't, because you're handcuffed to this huge chain of people who are all connected together with these soul ties, because you had sex with this one person and these other people and all that. And man, it's tragic within the relationship. The other side of that is you can never unsee something that you see. And there's something in particular with men about sexual things that we see. And so when it talks about being an internal sin, that's part of it, is the porn you've looked at, the women you've had sex with, the people you went and saw strip in that bar, those images are never leaving your mind. And they start to compete for your attention with the beauty and rightful desire you should have for your spouse. And so, in essence, by committing those sexual sins, you've actually condemned yourself. Because now you're going to have to fight through those things that you can never forget. Yeah. And it's really tragic.
Right.
All right, well, we're going to close it down with just 3 kind of sort of, let's say, tips for dating. Okay. And here's what they are. One we've already talked about a lot, but I just want to remind everybody. When you go into a dating relationship, have the purpose of considering that person for marriage. Not I'm going to say that because that's what Nate said I should say. But is that really your purpose? Not, but she'll feel good if I do this. Or, man, I'm lonely, so I just want somebody to hang out with. But go really genuinely, is that your purpose for this relationship? So first of all, have that as your purpose. Second of all, watch other people around you and what their marriages are like. It's hard to evaluate someone for marriage if you have no idea what you like and don't like in marriage. And I'm talking about just the mechanics of marriage, right? Marriage is something that can look very different for various people. And man, before you start dating, you should find married people in your life that you can be a part of their lives and figure out, what's this marriage thing all about? I mean, what?
Ideally, married people that you think do marriage well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So find
examples.
Right. Find those people and, ask them. You might think this sounds weird to ask them, like, hey, can I hang around, have lunch with you guys once a month, or, every couple weeks after church or whatever. You might think that sounds weird, but I don't know a single married couple, not a single one in our Christian circle, that if someone came up to them and asked them that, would be like, no, weirdo, get out of here. Right? I don't know a single one. We would be thrilled to have an opportunity to pour into someone that's considering marriage down the road and just wants to know, man, what's this marriage thing supposed to be like? Mm-hmm. So ask. And if you're a married couple watching this, Andrew and I included, seek those people out, right? Let's seek out those single folks that we can invite into our home and talk to them about, man, well, what do you think about marriage? What are you looking for in a dating relationship, and help to raise them up?
Right.
So 1, have a purpose. 2, find people to watch. That sounds weird. Find people to stalk. That's what we're kind of saying. And then finally, have godly friends that are your gender, and don't bail on them when you start dating someone.
Amen to that.
It's one of the biggest problems with modern dating relationships, is once you find someone that you're jiving with and the dating relationship's going well, it's like that's the only person in the world that matters. And it's absolutely a tragedy. Because once you start getting emotionally invested in a dating relationship, there's no red flags in the world, right? Everything is awesome no matter what, and we're
you wear the
doing this
rose-colored
thing.
glasses.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
But you know who's not wearing rose-colored glasses?
Your friends.
Your friends. And they will definitely, if unless they hate you, they will talk to you about the red flags that they see.
Yeah, having godly friends is so important. To date around those godly friends. You know, don't feel like dating has to be just a one-on-one relationship. Date in a group. And then your friends can see what this person's like and what you're like around this person and give you some, like, hey, here's some red flags, here's what I think, or whatever. And seek out their wisdom, too, in that. Don't wait for them to come to you, but seek out their wisdom.
That's right. And if they walk you through that process and you end up marrying that person, that gets them sort of in on the ground level, right? They're for your marriage from the beginning, which one of the things we always tell married couples is you've got to have friends that are in the corner of your marriage. Not in your corner as the husband or your corner as the wife, but in your corner as a married couple before the Lord. So have godly friends. So, have a purpose. Find other married couples to do life with. Have godly friends that are your gender.
And don't bail on them.
Don't bail on them. That's right.
Yeah. So in the comments below, let us know if there's some things that we've said that you think are whacked out and you have some opinions, or maybe some things that you've thought about in regards to like your kids dating and when you think they would be ready to date. So we'd love to hear that.
That's right. Or even better, show up on Sunday, this coming Sunday,
right?
And let's talk about it. We do a live event every Sunday night for half an hour starting at 8:30 Central. We would love to have you guys pop on and let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.